Good evening, TNT family. We are fortunate again to have our sister Khadijah Ameen, MP for St. Augustine and Shadow Minister for Local Government. We deeply appreciate her taking the time to join us tonight after a hectic day in Parliament. So, sis, I want to welcome you again in our channel and we would like to, if you can give us a little insight of what you saw with the government performance versus what they're saying that that they're doing it, because we see a lot of big talk, but we don't see that transcending out into the local government level, or our councillors are not getting the resources or people are not getting the help. So if you can just kind of elaborate and give our listening audience also insight of what you see is taking place versus what they're saying.
Well, at this time, the in the south area, particularly in the Penal region, which falls within the Penal Debe Regional Corporation, you have a number of areas under floodwaters, and they have been adversely affected for the past few days. The chairman of the Penal Debe Regional Corporation, Gautam Maraj, has been out on the field together with the councillors, trying to stretch the little resources that they have. I had the opportunity to join the leader of opposition, who, as the MP for Siparia, also represents this area in Penal. And she went out there with relief supplies and to see firsthand how the flooding was affecting residents. So I was there. There are places our vehicles couldn't go in. We had to go in with trucks and so on, and just to deliver some relief to residents who were marooned, who are stranded. And, it always bothers me that members of the government who are elected to deal with the entire Trinidad and Tobago do not seem to feel that all of Trinidad is Trinidad. Not a single government minister has visited the people of Penal and that region since they were affected by flooding. The MP for Siparia has called on the government, the Ministry of Public Utilities, to deal with the shortage of water in that area, pipe-borne water. So while you have a lot of water, flood water in the area, these people are not getting pipe-borne water because the Salcott was shut down, the desalination plant was shut down, and South Trinidad is on a water schedule of some sort, but they are without water in their pipes for cleanup. You also have the various arms of the state that could be called upon, and the MP for Siparia called on the minister to declare this area as high priority area, high priority zone, so that resources from various government ministries can be directed there. You can begin with having equipment, trucks, backhoes, water trucks, and so on from other regional corporations directed to Penal Debe region so that they can then send it out on the field according to their need. You should have the Ministry of Local Government sending workers from other corporations as well as from the CPEP to go to that region to help with cleanup and evacuation and so on, and that is not happening. You have various other ministries, such as the Ministry of Social Development, who is responsible for disaster relief grants. So when you see the type of damage and the types of losses that some of these people have in terms of furniture, appliances, infrastructural damage to their home, school uniforms and books and other children's supplies, these are areas that are covered by the grants, the disaster grants at the Ministry of Social Welfare. I have not seen the presence of social welfare. I have not heard from the government what their intention is with regards to going out and bringing relief to the people who are affected in that area. And sadly, what we are seeing now, when the leader of opposition spoke at a press conference, she took the media out to see firsthand, to get footage so that the rest of the country will know what is happening in this area. Today in Parliament, in response to questions from the opposition, instead of Faris Alwari giving us his commitment, sharing with us his government's plans or his intentions from his ministries to bring relief, this man is playing semantics with words. Because the question was, one member said that hundreds of persons were affected, and the chairman of the Penal Debe Corporation had said that thousands, tens of thousands of persons were affected. He is playing words in terms of whether it is 100 or it is thousands. The truth is, when you have flooding in a region, it is not only the number of persons who have water inside their house who are affected. There are people whose access to reach their homes is flooded and they are either marooned or they can't get home. Children who go to school have to jump in army trucks and tractors to get a ride through the water to reach to their house. That means that they are affected. So while the ministry themselves has no personnel on the ground doing assessments, and the minister is not in a position to dispute the number of persons affected by flooding, the chairman of the regional corporation is telling the country that tens of thousands of persons are affected. And this to me speaks to the government minimizing the issue, minimizing the number of persons affected and the seriousness of that effect. But what you should really have is the Minister of Local Government coming out on the ground, giving the support to the regional corporations, seeing firsthand how people are affected in terms of the water in their homes, in terms of damage, in terms of cutting them off from essential services, cutting them off from going to work or going to school. There are children who may have exams in school and therefore they must be in school. There are people who cannot get food, cannot prepare a meal because their kitchens are underwater. So they have to go somewhere to get a ready-made meal. And, when I visited with the leader of opposition, she delivered some hot meals to some families. And, afterwards she kept saying, I wish we had more, I wish we had more. So where is the minister in all of this? With all the government resources, all the amenities of the state at his disposal, millions of dollars being spent, and you have the one backhoe in the corporation shutting down because it is under too much pressure. And I really think that Faris Alwari, as the Minister of Local Government, has to be a little more sensible than he appeared to be today. And to me, his response was absolutely callous in trying to play games about how many people are affected rather than telling us what he's going to do or, in fact, being there. And this situation has developed over the weekend. And today, being Friday, we had Parliament, and so we asked the question in Parliament. But the truth is, the minister has had all week and he has not gone out there to the ground. And I think, to me, this is an indication of the government's approach. Their focus really is never on people. And to me, this is another opportunity for Trinidad and Tobago to see the type of governance we have and how disconnected governments are with the reality on the ground. And whether it is in time of a disaster or our normal day-to-day lives, they tend to discredit the opposition when we represent the areas we are elected for. They tend to discredit how serious the issues are. They tend to make people feel that we are somehow telling untruths. And to me, I think all of Trinidad and Tobago has to take note of the government's callous approach when it comes to persons who are affected by dire circumstances, and the fact that the government resources does not seem to be for all of Trinidad and Tobago.
So, I saw his smart remarks towards uni parliamentary, and with Faris playing with words. And we see the same issue on and on again, where there's a lack of resources. You have one backhoe not working, So it's a continuous of the same thing, and yet you see all this money that's been allocated, and we don't know where the money is going. We see a lack of management, as you said, with the how they handle the situation and how they coordinate it. They don't seem to be able to manage the situation, or they lack the interests. First, I think they lack the interest. I don't think they're that incapable. I think they just lack the interest. And again and again, we see the lack of visibility from the government and its ministers. I mean, if it was Prime Minister Kamala Persad, it was something happening in the north, she would have been on the scene. And I'm sure you would have been right there too. I just want to remind you all that this channel is available to you at a moment's notice. So I want to be able to bring live what you guys are saying as it happens. So let's if you could get someone to use their device while you're out there and you're responding to some kind of emergency, I can create a link, and within minutes you are up and live and everyone is seeing what's going on with your situation there.
Certainly, we will appreciate that, because one of the things I recognize is that mainstream media may not always carry what's happening in some of these areas. I must say that on Monday, when we went out with the leader of opposition, on Monday or Tuesday it was, earlier this week, she invited the media to her office in Penal, and she spoke about the situation. She sat with the chairman of the corporation and the councillors in a press conference, and had invited the media to go out on the field. And I think when she did that, you had the rest of Trinidad and Tobago getting a clearer picture of how bad the situation was, because this was not a staged or manufactured scene. This is where the media could not even go in with their own vehicles. They had to hop on a truck, hop on an army truck, on a dump truck, a Penal Davy Corporation dump truck, to drive through some of these areas. They were seeing children coming out in water at waist height. They were seeing people on their bicycles riding through, and water up to their knees, and people walking with boots, and the water is way past the height of the boots walking through. And I mean, seeing firsthand, we also met persons who were a gentleman in a wheelchair who could not come out of his house. We met a family who had a special needs child, an autistic child. We met elderly persons who were stranded and whose families were concerned about getting them a suitable meal because of their diabetes and hypertension and so on, where they have special dietary requirements. So that type of human reality, the media was able to go and highlight some of those. And interestingly, once mainstream media becomes aware of it, that is how the rest of the country becomes aware. Unfortunately, though, the government does not seem to have that sensitivity and that awareness. Social media has been one of the biggest eye-openers for us, where the UNC members can share what's happening on the ground with the rest of Trinidad and Tobago. Because sometimes when we go live, that is when the rest of the country knows that something is happening in that area. And when we continue to talk, the government will vilify us. The government will call us unpatriotic. Not only we who are elected members of parliament, but anybody who speaks out about something that is not in agreement with the government. This government has a very dictatorial tendency to attack and vilify that person. And I'm seeing that, and I'm saying that it's a dangerous trend. But people like you and other social media activists, other fair and balanced news pages, and even our own social media profiles out there is what has been sharing. And the leader of opposition's Facebook pages would have gone live, and that really helps to sensitize other parts of the country, one, about what is going on, but also about the government's response and how the government treats with these types of things. And it is a question now is for those people who are not even affected by the floods to reflect and say, if the government is treating those people who are in such dire circumstances with such callousness and lack of care, what will they do for me? What will happen when it's my turn? And we see from time to time, we see major issues arise. We see families affected by tragedy. And that is a comparison, an opportunity to compare between the leadership of Kamla Persad-Bissessar as Prime Minister versus the present leadership of Keith Rowley. And the impression you get is that these people really don't care. They don't care to visit a family whose child has been murdered. They don't care to visit a place where people lose their homes, fire or some type of disaster. They don't care to go to flooded areas where thousands or tens of thousands of people are affected, to see firsthand. And I can tell you, when you sit in a place where you have resources, I I shudder to think that the leaders we have are the type of leaders who could sit on those resources and do nothing. And even just by your words, your utterance, you can approve resources to go to an area. And I think the least the government could do is to visit and go there and be on the ground with people. I don't know if there's a fear based on the fact that they know that people are unhappy with the government. So, I mean, they might be afraid that people may not appreciate their visit. I mean, we have had places where we had ministers being, getting a not so welcome response from residents. In fact, I
But
recall.
since they started that in the beginning, even before the people became upset with them, they were never visible. They
Yeah,
did not respond. So I mean, they have
yeah,
no excuse at this time. And after the eight, almost was 9, going to 10 years now of government, we don't see the things in place. And they refuse to take any advice, even from us outside. That we tried to make suggestions, we tried to bring help. And they would not accept the help, and they're proud and presumptuous. So we have to continue to expose them, and we need to show the population what we will do.
you
In
know,
comparison to
and
what they do.
what I think is noteworthy when people say UNC and PNM, same thing. The UNC and PNM are very different. One in how they operated in government, but even now, while in government, while they have all the resources of the state, to me, the UNC does more with less. When we had the COVID situation, UNC MPs and councillors were cooking thousands of meals and distributing. It was Kamla Persad-Bissessar's leader of opposition who got seamstresses and tailors on board, anybody in the business, to spare cloth to make cloth masks and distributed that out throughout Trinidad. It was a remarkable effort, and it was an effort that took care. Whereas the Minister of Health at that time was telling people, you could just tie up your nose with a old jersey. And I'm seeing that type of ongoing effort where the leader of opposition would corral manpower, corral business people and others to assist those in need. I think that remarkable leadership is something that is a hallmark for her. But I think Keith Rowley just continues to not even care, and his ministers are now following suit. So whereas before you would have seen Faris Alwari at least trying to look good for the media, because one thing he does is try to impress the media. Whereas before he would have put that effort in. What I am seeing from him now is a similar type of callousness as his prime minister. I have seen the Penal Debe Corporation, but in fact all regional corporations experienced tremendous cut in funding. And every financial year, although they are allocated a certain amount in the budget, the government has not been releasing that full amount to them. One, they have been finding reasons to take back monies that they already gave. And a very quick example would have been, I think, on the 2nd of November, just before the close of the financial year, they circulated a memo that took away about $42 million from the regional corporations to put it into CPEP, which is a politically run organization, and RDC. And what that meant is that regional corporations such as Penal DB would have lost monies for disaster management, for procuring equipment such as trucks or backhoes, for police, municipal police uniforms and equipment, municipal police training, municipal police stations, accommodation, and several other critical areas, including as well the construction of bridges, roads, and box drains. So when you extract $42 million from regional corporations who gets already getting small funding, and on top of that, in a crisis, you are not able to be there and corral a little bit of support for them. To me, that is an abject failure. So I trust that the people of Trinidad and Tobago will see this as a demonstration, and they know that, I mean, people, when we go out to areas that are not traditional UNC, they will tell you, if Auntie Cams was Prime Minister, all now she out here in she boots. That's what they tell you. She would have been out here. And I think that is the type of leadership we need in Trinidad and Tobago. When people talk about things are tough all over the world, it is your humanity that makes a difference in your leadership. It is not just what you can give or financially provide. It is the management of the economy. It is having policies that are people friendly. It is having a caring leader that will find a way so that if we have a situation where you have flooding as we do now, and you have corporate Trinidad and Tobago stepping up, you have business people who are willing to give. Their challenge is that business has been bad for the past few years, and as much as they are willing, they can give less than they would have before. But those businesses who have been contributing things like mops and buckets and brooms, cleaning supplies, cleaning liquids, drinking water, and so on, and delivering it to the Penal Debe Regional Corporation that has been allowing them to do that relief. But where is the government? That is the question. Where is the government? But if you have people-friendly policies that will boost the economy, you will have businessmen being able to do more in terms of their civic duty, in terms of corporate responsibility. And that type of leadership, as I say, is what is missing. When you have leaders who are on the ground, you get a different perspective. And in as much as you will be an excellent policy maker, to me, you are an even better leader when you are on the ground with the people and seeing it and feeling it with them. So my heart goes out to the people of Penal Debe region. I really commend MP for Siparia for standing with the people of Penal, and the chairman of the Penal Debe Corporation and the councillors in that region. They are doing a tremendous job and facing, such, you go there and you would just feel so overwhelmed with the severity of the flooding in some of those areas. Is it enough to say that the areas are flood prone? It is not, because there are things that can be done to reduce the flooding. There's something called the South Oropouche River Basin Study that provides a lot of technical information, and it is for the government now to invest and implement the projects that come out of that. And that includes dredging of major water courses, building banks so that the water from those water courses will not spill over into the residential areas and agriculture areas, because agriculture is also affected, and we're not talking about that today. It also includes putting floodgates to prevent water from coming in when the water levels rise, when the tide levels are high, as well as pumps so that when the rain falls and the floodgate is closed, you can still get water out of the areas where you have residents, where you have agriculture and so on, into the major watercourse over the banks. So there are several communities that are protected by that system of banks and gates, floodgates and pumps. And it is really a very simple equation. But the fact is that the technical studies have been done and the government has that available to them. So I think they have to explain to the people of South Trinidad, the people of the Oropouche River Basin area, why they have not made any serious progress in terms of putting in some of these mechanisms. Here in North Trinidad, when I see St. Augustine flood, I remember we had the Caroni River Basin study that also had recommendations such as having retention ponds on the hillside, having mechanisms to slow the water runoff from the hills, because a lot of water comes to St. Augustine from north of the Eastern Main Road, from the hills, come across the Eastern Main Road, across the highway, and make its way to the Caroni River and the Caroni River Basin. But because of how fast you have that runoff, because you have unapproved development, you have ill planning by this government, because HDC is also part of the problem in terms of building developments there that causing a lot of problems. And what we are seeing is that you have all this money being spent to do these studies, and then nothing comes out of it. So I'm asking, why are you wasting our time and our money? But then I comfort myself, because I know that when the UNC becomes government, we will have that technical information and sound scientific guidelines to put in infrastructural development that will bring meaningful change. So, and to me, that is why I sympathize with the people of Penal so much, because the people of St. Augustine have been victims of flooding and victims of neglect by this government as well.
Exactly what I'm proposing, and I've spoken to our political leader in reference to that's what you're talking about. Recommendations were to put water treatment facilities and the holding facilities, expand the holding facilities, especially in that Oropouche River, the Caroni River. We need to create like some what they call like floodgates, but also the larger retention areas for treatment. We redirect that water for storage and treatment. So that will help quite a bit if we do all those things. But we have not seen any of these things done under this government. And they continue to show us that they can do what they want. They don't have to answer to us. They're very arrogant. We have seen that from day one. But I want to bring to life, to the our listening audience, because we have international audience also, that I mean with YouTube you're going around the world, with the social media. So we want to engage our population both inside and outside the country to understand where we heading at, what our plan of action is, as we take government. And I like I say to everyone, I want to be able to hit the ground running. We must be able to have our plan of action ready to roll, and we're hitting the ground running, showing the population, well, this is the way it should be done.
Yeah, I
As we
fully agree. I fully agree. And I am telling you that, on the East West corridor, I see more and more areas being affected by flooding. And, they will talk about climate change and reforestation and so on. I mean, the government has taken money and pumping into reforestation programs. And what we are seeing is political contracts being given, some to relatives of high ranking government officials, so they have reduced it to something similar to CPEP. And you have a lot of areas where in the hills you have development taking place. You have tons of silt being washed down even with the simplest rainfall. And the Eastern Main Road, I can tell you, from by Wassa in St. Joseph all the way up to Curep, St. Augustine on the main road. When you go a little higher up to Tunapuna in the vicinity of Lovers Lane and by Robin Ojas there, you always have this deluge coming down. Higher up by Food Masters there, and then if you go as high up as Aruka and so on, you are getting this volume of flood, you are getting this volume of silt coming down, and it speaks of unplanned development. It speaks of poor management by the government in terms of regulating. And some of these areas are represented by PNM MPs, and I don't even know how people is continuing to vote for these guys. I mean, then government, and you're not seeing any effort from them to bring any meaningful relief, So the thing is, building without planning properly is part of the problem. But as it is now, we have to really look at what those studies are telling us in terms of water management. And under the prime ministership of Kamla Prasad Bisesa, there was a ministry responsible for water resources. So it was not only WASA drinking water, it was water management on a whole, which included drainage. So that sometimes, I mean, we have been calling on the Minister of Works and Transport, Rohan Sinanan, who is responsible for the drainage division. But water management includes it is really an environmental approach. And our Ministry of the Environment and Water Management, to me, was a significantly advanced ministry as opposed to just a ministry responsible for drainage. So drainage is part of water management, and it includes conserving water. Every time in the dry season, I mean, the Minister of Public Utilities is telling us that the dams are dry. Rain didn't fall over the dams. And the truth is, I think it is time for us to move beyond our typical reservoirs and look at conserving water, look at areas where you have developed
Exactly. That you
areas,
expand
and you
certain
should be.
areas. We do definitely.
Yes, so you should be reducing the runoff. You should have ways to retain water, and you should have ways to get that water purified and get it to those who are in need. We do have people who are in senior citizens' homes, who are even ordinary citizens who do not get a proper water supply. We have schools in the areas that are on a schedule. There are a lot of areas in St. Augustine constituency affected by this because for the first time ever, they are on a schedule. But unfortunately, on the days that we are scheduled to get water, we do not always get a supply. So you have people whose tanks become empty and then they have to go by a friend to wash their clothes or take a shower. So this unreliable supply from WASA in this day and age when you are seeing so much flooding is just ironic and speaks to the incompetence of the government once again. So I am so happy to have had this opportunity to share with you tonight. I did have a long day, as you say. Said we were in Parliament, and we continue after Parliament. I actually had a meeting where we continue our election preparation, and I commend our UNC team. I commend our political leader for spearheading that team in a very hands-on manner. And we continue to represent. But felt that joining you tonight was very important to me to share what is going on with you. So I want to thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much for taking the time, sis. We deeply appreciate that after your long day and hectic meeting. So I just want to remind you, I am ready to go live with you in the midst of a situation. Just give me a call if you message me and you didn't see me answer. Call me, and I'll create a link and you go live. And we want to bring the physical evidence to people. Back in the day they said a picture was worth 1,000 words. So well, a video is worth more than that, right? So we
Indeed,
want to bring it
indeed.
live and real to the people, or people both inside and outside the country was taking place with you. And I do want to thank you for taking the time of joining us. Trini, you have any questions for our MP here?
Actually, good night, Peter, Khadijah.
Hi,
I,
hi.
I was coming in, but your discourse was so interesting that I didn't bother to interrupt you. What I want you to share with the listening audience and the public, what what in this recent penal flooding, what was the ODPM's contribution or help that they gave to the Penal Levy region? I don't know if you could outline briefly, since we are just about done, outline briefly what was the ODPM's contribution and help that you received, and in the development plans that you saw for the Oropush Basin, was it included to have water from the flooded areas like Sign Village go to the Mora Dam, and water from the Clark Road area go to the Clark Road Dam, because that doesn't happen presently. The Clark Road is flooded and the water goes to the Europut River and then goes down to flood Baby and Woodland. The same thing happens in Sign Village. The Sign Village water floods the road, then goes to the Europut River and goes to flood Baby and Woodland. It
Right.
does not go to the dams.
Right. So what I can tell you now, when I was chairman of the Tunapuna Piako Regional Corporation, I would have been part of the Caroni River Basin study. And I can share the details of that with you off the back of my hand. Similarly, the chairman of the Penal Debe Corporation can share those details with you off the back of his hand, because he is also a resident of the area. He has a long-standing history in that area, and he is an excellent chairman of that regional corporation. And I think it might be good for me to arrange to have him as a guest with you,
Please, please,
because
please.
yeah, that is an area that we should expand and share. And I know that he has up to yesterday, we had a conversation, and he continues to be very passionate about the need for some of these infrastructural projects recommended in that study to be implemented. So we will certainly share that. What the chairman of the Penal Debe Corporation also shared with us, our team, is that he would have taken the initiative to send correspondence to the ODPM to say, help, we need help. And the regional corporations are first responders in times of disaster. And when regional corporations respond and they recognize that this thing is of such a magnitude that the ODPM is required, the ODPM is then notified, and that triggers a system. It is for the ODPM to decide if this is a level 2, level 3 disaster, if this requires the Ministry of National Security, if this requires the Defense Force coming in, what other resources are required. And so I know that the chairman of the Penal Navy Corporation would have triggered that system to invite the ODPM. So given how dire the situation is there, having the chairman of the regional corporation as your guest is something that we can arrange. And he is very knowledgeable. He's a really admirable character and very humble man, really on the ground, but with remarkable knowledge and experience, which I think will be great to be shared with you. Yeah?
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay,
Okay,
guys.
sis. Thank you very much, and look forward to having you again. To discussing the issues going forward.
Thanks so
Also,
much.
all right, and thank you very much. Good night.
Good night.
So I want to thank our listening audience for joining us tonight, and we will continue to educate our people and bring all the necessary information to you on this platform. And feel free to engage us with any questions you have going forward. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.